Hi, welcome to Clitorally Speaking, the podcast. I'm Michelle Doherty.
And I'm Emily Lane.
We are BFFs dedicated to bringing you conversations between girlfriends over a bottle of wine.
Oh, I am so excited about the wine part.
Oh, me too. So pull up a chair, grab your glass,
And let's get talking.
Well, Emily, good to see you.
Nice to see you too, Michelle.
Yeah, I have been practicing a different intro when I say hello to you because I've been sounding a lot like Fat Albert. Hey, Emily, how you doing? I'm like, I really got to come up with something else. So, hey. Hi.
I miss the hey, by the way.
You do like that?
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Maybe we'll ask our listeners to say, hey, do you have
They're
any
not chiming in on that one. They're not. They must all probably like just mute it until I'm done with that hello. But yeah, we're back in the studio.
We are a little atypical of schedule for us. We're getting another episode here in the middle of the week, which is really exciting because...
Yes, this is a very special episode, and I have been looking forward to it since I had this idea. My mother and my daughter are both visiting for the holidays, and I wanted to do a podcast episode with them, and I threatened that I wouldn't feed them while they're at my house. And they graciously said, she graciously said, okay, Michelle, it's another one of your projects. Sure, we'll be happy to come. And so I want to introduce my mom, Patty.
Hello, everyone.
And my daughter, Megan.
Hi there.
And I'm looking forward to our conversation. It means a lot to me that you guys are here and doing this with Emily and I today as our guests.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So our listeners know all about you already because we talk about you all the time.
Oh, I've heard.
Yeah. If you guys want a refresher on Megan, a couple episodes ago with our guest Amanda Stagenborg, you can hear all about Megan as a toddler that Amanda used to babysit. You can pause this episode right now, go back and re-listen to it, and then you can pick this one back up when you're done with that. But yeah.
Well, since you've been starting your family, it's a good thing that you brought a nice spread here for us to enjoy. Thank you. We've got all kinds of goodies, cheese, grapes, all kinds of
olives,
treats.
some artichoke dip. And
we've really stepped up our game from just drinking wine on the episode to like having fancy nibbles.
Well, we feast.
Yes.
We try to feast anyway here.
That's right.
And sometimes we are more successful at feasting than others. I'm not so sure about today. But anyway, as part of my mom and my daughter being on the episode, I wanted to pick a wine that I always heard my mom say that it was her favorite. And so I bought a bottle of Puy Vissé. And I probably said it wrong. But I was hoping that my mom could share with us why this has been her favorite wine.
Well, it happened back in Hawaii when we were living in Hawaii. And
How long ago was that?
77.
Okay.
77 to 80,
Okay.
somewhere around there. And your dad and I went to this restaurant down in Honolulu because the wine steward from the Cannon Club, which was the Air Force captain, well, that was the officers club, was on Diamond Head. We couldn't decide on a wine one night, so they sent him over. And so we told him what we liked, and he came up with this wine that the two of us could drink because the husband liked it a little bit drier, I'd liked it a little bit sweeter. So he gave us that night. And then he proceeded to go to this restaurant downtown Honolulu, and we proceeded to follow him. So it's one of those restaurants that I can't remember the name tonight, but you could easily spend 3 hours, and it was a lot of fun. And
So you followed the wine
we
steward?
We followed the wine steward, yes.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm sure Emily's followed a few wine stewards around town.
Absolutely. And then when they leave town and move on to, greener pastures, it's a difficult departure.
It's like a member of your family has left.
Totally. Yeah. Well, that's neat. So this brings back memories of a very happy time.
Yes.
Yeah. How wonderful. Yeah. So I'll share with our listeners a little bit about this wine. So Clos Nolie, it is a Puy Vissé, a white Burgundy. I'm really excited that you brought this in. I've never had this one. I like it quite a bit. I find notes of clementine and white pepper. It's very vibrant and fresh, and it's just a really really pretty kind of golden color. So definitely one to try, and obviously one that's been around for a long time. So.
Yes.
Yeah, and the Puy Fusé, I got this from the wine merchant, and I was looking online trying to get some other ones, but I thought I'll go to the wine merchant because they are partners here on Clearly Speaking. And this bottle is at the lower end of Puy Fusé. And I do love my mother very, very much. But when I had the choice between spending $70 a bottle or $25,
Yeah.
I chose $25. I mean, I love you, Mom.
No, but it's good.
But
Yeah.
It's good.
But that's higher than what we normally drink here on Clearly Speaking for our listeners. So I have not found, and I don't know if there's Puy Fusés under $20. And I doubt you're going to find one in a $15 range.
Yeah, this is definitely an entry point for white burgundies. That price point. So, but I think it certainly tastes wonderful and true to the region.
Yeah, it's very, very good. So that's your impression.
Yeah,
Megan,
Michelle?
you haven't said anything too much about this wine. What's your impression of it?
Well, I like it. I am not a big white wine drinker myself these days anyway. But I do think it's fresh and easy to drink, and I like it. Yeah.
Now you haven't been drinking all that long, right? Wink, wink.
Well,
Yeah.
legally for a couple of years, yes.
So, what was your first favorite wine?
I've kind of always liked red wine. But I personally am not a big wine drinker, so I don't really have a favorite. But basically, like the cheapest Pinot Noir I can get if I'm in a wine mood. Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you live in an area that produces incredible wines.
Yes.
Megan lives in Portland.
Yes, or Oregon, not Maine. Yeah. No, there are wine. Vineyards all over the place. I have many recommendations from folks in town. You can pretty much go to any grocery store and have a nice selection of wine. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Michelle, what do you think of this wine?
Well, this wine is very good, and I'm glad I finally tried it. I mean, for all these years, I was like, "Oh, Puy Fusé, Puy Fusé." I didn't know what it was. Yeah, I knew what it was, but I never tried it. It is very nice. It's light. I can see myself drinking this in summertime as well as wintertime, with food or without food. Don't necessarily need to have a good meal in front of me, but. It is an elegant wine, and I think it's one of those that it's like your nicest pair of, I think, silk panties.
The ones that you wear on special occasions.
On special occasions where you might need a meal, you might not have a meal, but it doesn't really matter, but it's a special occasion. Yeah, those are the types. It's like, it's your best, and it's not a black pair of panties. I see
something
like
pretty,
I think
color.
like a
With a little bit of lace.
a little lace, a little light pink, even maybe. That's what I'm seeing.
Taupe.
Yeah.
Is the taupe pink?
No, but I like taupe.
You
Like the lace.
Oh, okay, for the panties.
Yes.
Is that
Okay.
what the wine reminds you of?
No.
Okay.
Didn't relate it to panties, honey.
I always relate my wine
Yes.
to panties. It's a way. It's kind of like my.
It's the generation gap.
It's more of a wine education gap. I don't have the nose I mean, I have drank a lot of wine, and it's not because I lack experience in drinking wine. I don't want to mislead our listeners into thinking that my inexperience in describing wines like Emily does not mean that I have not drank a lot of wine. I have.
We just have our own terminology for Michelle, which is wonderful. And I think that someday what we should do is put all of the terminology into a book. And yeah,
Our own little cocktail
Yes.
table, coffee table book.
That's
Perfect.
right.
With like representative pictures.
all right, and maybe even a set of panties that go with it.
Clearly Speaking panties.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get their own. All right.
See, we're only minutes in this conversation. We're already having great ideas.
Yeah.
I love it.
I've only drank a little bit
Two
of my
sips.
wine.
Just imagine what's
Yeah.
going to happen
When
once
we've moved on to the next bottle. So let's take a real quick break. Let's top our glasses off. We'll come back and we're going to get into the, a little more deep discussion here. All right?
Sounds great.
My mom some more.
Oh. All right. There you go. So,
That is so
Sam,
nice.
we were thinking it would be fun on our breaks to do like shout outs to some of our regular listeners. So maybe at some point we can weave that in, do a little.
If we have time
thing.
today, we may have
Yeah.
to do it next week
Yeah.
with Lola. Let's maybe plan a little bit more.
If we have time.
Okay. Yeah. Eat your crackers now.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
I was like,
crunch, crunch, crunch.
Do you like the wine, Sam?
I do.
I think I would love the Sam Panny description.
What type of boxer brief is this?
it is not
This
when you
is-
leave in a laundromat for a few days.
Oh,
That's for sure.
and then wear to the studio. Well, for our YouTube listeners, the people before us had not bathed recently.
They were seasoning themselves.
So we walked into the studio today. It was a little pungent. But it's better now. Sam worked hard at making it nice for us. So
The wine doesn't hurt either.
everything's better with
Wine.
wine.
Puis vous say.
Fufuse. Yeah.
Ready.
Hey, we're back. Everybody's got a little bit more wine in their glass. And we've topped off with a little crunching of our crackers and our cheese and our sausage here. So, yeah, thanks. Welcome back to Literally Speaking, the podcast. I am, again, very thrilled that my mom and Megan, my mom, Patty, and my daughter, Megan, are here with us today. And we were kind of talking a little earlier today around the kitchen island. And they were like, what are we going to talk about? And we ended up having like a 45-minute conversation. And I wished I'd had the recorder going because it was, again, prime, wonderful conversations. It was why one of the reasons Emily and I started this podcast was to capture some of the great conversations that we have with people. So one of the things that I brought up this morning was, there's a kind of a similar theme or that kind of runs besides us all having the same blood and being biologically connected as women at the age of 19 and 20. We all of us here and in my family,
Absolutely, and me as
And
well. Even your new family,
my new
here.
family, Emily,
Yeah.
we have left our home and gone and done something else. My mom, and I want to ask you some questions about this. My mom left St. Louis at the age of 19, 20, and went to New York to dance.
Oh, that was 19. I love it. Okay.
Yeah.
First time I left St. Louis.
Yeah, the first time to pursue your dreams, not to raise your children, but to pursue your dreams, you left and went to New York to dance in New York City. And then my daughter at 19 left St. Louis to move out to Portland, Oregon to pursue her dreams. And I left and went to Swansea, Wales for a year abroad and came back. I wish if I had been able to stay, I would have tried to figure that out, but I didn't. I came back, and that's fine. Life is as it is. But I thought that was kind of interesting when I thought of that connection that we all have had, and
A kind of a natural sense to be strong, independent women and pursue your dreams.
right,
Right.
like
Yeah.
to go do it. So, let's just start off with you, Mom, and I'm going to call her Mom for the listeners out there because I don't know how to. Hey, Patty, how are you doing? So
That would be strange.
that would be too strange. So when you made that decision that you were going to go to New York, how old were you?
I was probably 17,
Okay.
but my parents made sure that I understood that I wouldn't be allowed to go until I had a year of college.
Okay.
So after I graduated from high school and did Muni for a summer, I went to college for a year. And I went to my dad. I said, okay. I got hired again at Muni from the dancing course. And he said, okay, you can go. And I left in August
After the season?
after the season.
So, did you have a job lined up, or did you
No.
go just saying, I'm going to audition and I'm going to make it happen?
Right.
So, how many?
And my dad, they put me on the train. And my dad had worked for the railroad. And he said, I had to do it all on my own, except that he gave me a pass to come back on the train if things didn't work out. I could always get home.
Yeah.
That was
So that made him
nice.
feel a little bit better about sending his daughter off to New York City.
How long did it take you to find work?
I did a lot of different auditions and stuff, and I finally got a job at Radio City Music Hall in the ballet corps when they still had the ballet corps.
Wonderful.
And I made from having not having a job, but having worked at Muni for 10 weeks, we could get unemployment.
Oh, nice.
So I stood on unemployment lines thinking, why am I here?
Mm-hmm.
And after I got the job, I worked for a while, never did a show. I quit and came back home. I went to school.
Okay.
Well, I think there was a man in there kind of,
Yeah, her
telling
father.
That
I started
guy.
dating him before at the end of my first season at Muni.
started
Yeah.
dating my dad, which all of our listeners are very happy that you did that, because otherwise they wouldn't get to hear my sultry voice every Friday.
So
Right.
you obviously you grew up dancing. What styles of dance did you study?
I studied ballet, which was my first love, tap and jazz, and did some commercials for
Oh, neat.
when they were opening up Northwest Plaza. Did some there. Did when they started to open up the Four Seasons Lodge. Did some commercials for that, dancing,
Wow.
and performed around. Did the Harkuda Dancers, which was basically a Jewish group, but most of us weren't Jewish. It was just a fun group. And danced St. Louis,
Wow.
did St.
Yeah.
Louis Civic Ballet as a junior. And the best education really was Muni for 3 years. I did that 3 years. So I did 30-some shows.
Wow, my goodness. Now, I know that, Michelle, you grew up dancing as well.
Oh,
And
yeah, I did.
and did you, and is this something that you longed for? Is this maybe something that's part of the blood as well? Or is it something that, Patty, you encouraged Michelle to do from your experience?
Well, when
She encouraged.
her father was in the Air Force, so wherever we were stationed, I ended up teaching somewhere. And it got me into the community. And I got to know people. And either they had to sit there and wait for me, or they had to be with a babysitter. So they came to the studio, and they all ended up dancing, even my boys.
Wow.
We did.
Now, Megan, did you study dance?
I did up through ish my like 7th or 8th grade year in middle
Really?
school. Yeah, I danced at
That
McKinley.
far?
Yeah.
Oh, at McKinley.
At McKinley.
That's right. I was thinking outside at the other, when we would
No.
drive to the studio. That ended at like
No, I took like dance lessons. Like my mom, took me to those, and I danced. And there are some really great pictures of me.
we could probably post them on our website.
I would appreciate that you did. But yeah, I did that sort of, I guess, privately. And then when I got into middle school, I hadn't danced in a while, and then I went into the, took dance classes and
Instead
then-
of PE, it was a
instead of-
choice.
yeah, and then yeah.
So, speaking of, pictures back from the early days of dance, I'm curious about maybe a favorite dance costume.
I have a least favorite.
Okay, let's hear it.
Is that polka costume that I had to wear?
Yeah.
That yellow and red, awful blue.
Oh yeah, the one I
thing?
have that picture of you
Yeah,
in.
the one
picture. Yeah.
The one that she shows everybody.
Yeah, she's like, this is my
Oh.
daughter in her polka costume. It was just so difficult to get in and out of, and I hated it. Yeah. So
Michelle, do you have a memory of a costume you love or hated?
I hated, but I also understand the effectiveness of this costume. The black trash bags, the shredded trash bags that my mom made us
wow.
wear to do the whiz, ease on down the road.
Oh, yeah.
And she was like, "Just trust me." I was like. Me and my friends were like shredding trash bags. We're like, this is the suckiest costume we've ever had to wear, And
This is just garbage.
this is just garbage. But I mean, it's
Saved the parents lots of money.
Well,
and it was effective on stage.
right. I mean, everything's always hindsight's 2020, you know. But I totally understand now what that was
Yeah.
like. Yeah. Did you
I-
dance, Emily?
I did, yeah. I started off with tap when I was really young, like 4 or so, and boy, I do have a favorite
Oh, yeah?
dance. Yes, it was a bunny rabbit. And of course, you
Yeah.
know me. I have this affinity for bunny rabbits,
Right.
and yeah, I love. If I could still wear it, I would. Yeah.
Well,
Uh-huh.
I'm really glad you can't. I think your fashion choices are a lot
Have
better than
improved.
than a bunny costume, Emily. But if it made you happy, then that's
Oh,
all that matters.
It was great. What about you, Patty?
Oh, there's quite a few. Probably my most favorite is the Potticott costume. When I did Potticott from Nathalie Levine and Michael Sims.
I don't know what that is.
It's the dance of the 4 divas, ballerinas.
Okay, at Potticott, as in
P-A-D-S.
the number cut. Got
Yes.
it.
Their arms interlocked.
Huh? Oh, no, that's the 4 Little Swans.
Oh,
That's from Swan Lake.
okay.
Anyway, that's probably one of my favorites. And then the other one would be Tarantella. And that was 5 of us with potadas with guys.
Okay.
And I was sort of the lead of that group.
Do you have photos of?
I have some photos, yes. And then my favorite one from uni of 30 some shows is I have a picture of myself with Donald O'Connor, and he's got his arm around me. And I ended up doing a special dance with him with 7 other girls, but I got a $5 extra that week because I had to say a line.
How
You got
old?
$5 extra. Wow.
Nice.
Yeah. 'cause
Were you
I-
Actors Equity?
Yes.
Okay, from
That's for equity.
the time at the Muni. Fascinating.
I think it would be fun to invite our listeners to share some of their photos of early dance costumes.
Their favorite or least favorite.
We'd love to see those.
The one I like of Michelle is her little mouse.
Oh,
Remember that from Tadlocks?
Yes, I was in the
A bear.
I was
It
a
was a
bear. We
bear.
were doing a Disney theme or something. I still think though I loved it when I was a marshmallow with the white net and the white tights and
That
the
was
white
me too.
and the white leotard and
Yes, yeah, the net.
and the net. I was like a marshmallow. And
that would be a great Halloween costume.
Well, it would be.
Yeah.
Gosh, I have so many things I can
I-
wear for Halloween now. I was hoping to just kind of like,
Shred
sit
another
back.
trash bag.
I could, and then just do jazz hands
Just-
down the
there you
street.
go.
Yeah, scare the children away.
You can do that any day of the week. You
Scare
don't
the
need
children.
Halloween.
I don't need. I actually
You
don't need the
Halloween.
trash bag. That's right. That's right. That's my goal. So we talked about Mom leaving to go to New York City, and then coming home. And Megan, you left to go to Portland, and you have not come back to St. Louis yet, other than when you visit. What made you decide that you wanted to go to the West Coast
Well, you know,
or
much
the Pacific Northwest? I don't want to.
like you can say west is the
Okay,
same.
okay.
Upper left North USA. Upper, you know what? We're gonna
That
leave
one.
that. No, I mean a lot like my grandmother. I had done a year at university in southern Mississippi, and I decided I was not going back. And I didn't really have a plan in place when I left. I still wanted to go to school, but I didn't have any like real viable options. And so I was just planning on doing chugging along at my general ed credits and like traveling to sort of figure out where I wanted to go next. And, you know, a family friend of ours, he said, you know, I have some family up in Portland because it was on my list of places to check out. And he was like, why don't I get you in contact with them? And if you can coordinate a date when you go visit, I'll pay for your plane tickets out there. And I had not met anybody who was just that generous after only talking to me for a few hours that I thought that was an opportunity I could not pass up. So I went out and visited in
2014.
July of 2014. And I stayed with his cousin and her wife and their 2 young boys at that point in time. And it was like coming to a place that I had already known. You know, I sort of fell in love with Portland, as many folks do. But I felt like I just kind of automatically belonged there. And it just so happened that as I was getting ready to leave, Abigail asked me to come back and be their live-in nanny and do some childcare in exchange for room and board. Again, another incredibly generous offer that I was like, this is an opportunity I'm not ever going to have again. So I took that and I told my parents I was leaving. I did not ask. I said, please help me buy a one-way plane ticket to Portland. And then a few weeks later,
after I got up from throwing myself on the floor and crying and kicking and screaming, I was like, here's a few pennies. No, it wasn't like that.
Oh, yeah. I did. I got on a plane and I moved out there and I stayed because that is, at least at this point in my life, where I feel like I'm supposed to be.
And I'm going to brag on you a little bit here. She went out there. She fulfilled your obligation, what you've been asked to do with Marjorie and Abigail and the boys. You've made incredible friends. You got jobs at various places that you needed to do to earn money. You have paid your way through college. You should be patting yourself on the back every day, because a lot of people don't. A lot of people just don't do that.
They don't take that same sense of responsibility, and nor are they brave enough to follow these signs and these doors that kind of naturally open for us. And it can be a very scary thing. So to go out there and attack it on your own, that's at a young age. That's definitely something to celebrate.
Well, I've never really thought about it like that, truthfully. I've just sort of been like, okay, well, this is what I have to do, because my other option is to not do anything or live a life that I don't want to. So it's like, all right, well, I have to figure out what I need to do to make this work. And honestly, sometimes I'm a little surprised by how I fly by the seat of my pants and it all manages to work out. There are some times I'm like, wow, how did I? All right, we're chugging along
Welcome to
here.
life,
yeah,
Megan.
that's what I really feel like it's like. But I mean, I am proud of myself. I, am going to be finally graduating with my undergraduate degree this spring.
What are you studying?
I'm a psych major.
Okay.
I have always been. That's never
Okay.
changed. I just took a little while to get there.
And what do you want to do with your degree?
Well, I would like to continue working with children, but less in the sort of privatized childcare way. I would like to go on to do probably a master's program and get some sort of clinical degree where I'm specialized in working with kids, or like child psychology or maybe developmental.
Well, you'll
psych.
have to do some kind of master's program, won't you, to make any money? Or
Well, yeah, I mean, to do what my big long-term dream is to one day have my own sort of holistic private practice where you just come to one location and you have you can see your PCP, but then you could also have folks who specialize in child psychology or other holistic medicine or those kinds of things. And to do that, I would eventually need a PhD, but that's years down the line and money and funding later. But yes, in order to do anything where I'm practicing clinically, I would need to get a master's degree.
Yeah.
So you said PCP, and that made me think of two other things, of which are probably not what you really meant. What does PCP stand for?
A primary care physician.
There
That's
you
just
go.
what I meant.
The first thought that came into my mind was Portland Cello Project.
Oh, yeah, no,
yeah.
Meg is a cello player also. Emily's a cello player.
I was. I don't know if I can still call myself a cellist, but
Do you have a cello?
I
in
don't.
Portland?
That is a dream one day too, but to own my own.
Yeah.
Well, I know somebody that can probably hook you up. And she probably knows people to hook you up with it too.
Absolutely.
Also played the sax and piano.
Yeah, she's quite musical. We talked about you and your music on another episode. I think that was episode 5.
And the one
And
thing that
6 and 7 and 8. No.
when she was in high school,
Well, yes.
when you did
Streetcar?
no, the other one.
That was Guys and Dolls was in
Guys
middle
and
school.
Dolls.
That was middle
Middle
school.
school.
Yeah.
She calls me up after she gets the part. She says, "But Grandma, I'm doing
Adelaide.
Adelaide and Guys and Dolls. I'm just like you did. I'm going to be in the same play." She was so excited. So I found out when she was going to perform it, and I flew in from Florida, and she came out of her. I was at the school in the hallway, and she came out of her classroom talking to her friend coming down, and she saw me, and she just screamed.
I don't remember screaming, but
Oh, you
probably
did.
I
She
did.
screamed, and so I got to watch their dress rehearsal.
Oh, I do remember that.
Yes, and her teacher said that was the biggest surprise. It just was great for her, and so I couldn't have missed it.
Yeah, it was really fun to watch.
So she gets the bug.
Yeah, there's
All of her kids do. They all do something.
Yeah, all of my
All my
kids.
grandchildren.
Yep, I guess we were just made for the stage, even if we had to build our own and call it a podcast. We were made for it. Well, let's take another real quick break and
sounds
come
great.
back and continue this wonderful conversation. All right.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Sam, do you need another splash? Sure. Okay, we gotta, and I'll get that other bottle open.
Okay.
There's a teeny bit in this bottle.
I do like this.
Was that another bottle of the same thing?
Yes. Well, because it was more than just Emily and I.
How'd you like it?
I did. I can't drink when I'm like anxious like that. So
Are you anxious? I'm trying to make you feel at home.
no, I'm fine now. It's
Okay.
I mean, it's a
Is it
little
nervous?
daunting.
Is
Yeah,
it nervous?
I've never.
Nerve-wracking?
Yeah, just a little
When
bit.
was the first time you had a drink with your mom? Is this something we shouldn't say on air?
No. We're
No,
with
not
the YouTube.
even. I mean, you mean like out in public or just like in
Just
a?
in general, the first
I
time
always
you
had-
like, hey, let's have a bottle of wine together.
Oh,
Oh,
well,
we
we've
haven't
never
done that
yet. We
Well, Tuesday.
I guess
picked you up.
Tuesday,
Yeah, I
yeah.
picked you up. No, we haven't sat down and just,
Used to have it for meals and stuff.
yeah, I mean, we've had glasses together. I just, I mean,
Yeah.
you could count the Christmas party last year. We were drinking proximally to each other.
Some of them were drinking more. Not necessarily. I was like, I'm going to bed, and I woke up the next day. I was like, wow, there's a not. They went through a lot of the liquor last night, which is, that's their age.
Yes, I'm a big whiskey person.
Yeah, that's their age. Now I think we just would have wine at Thanksgiving, Christmases.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now I remember finally getting to sit down with my dad's parents and having wine with them because they had wine every evening after dinner.
Wine
and
or Manhattans.
and they'd sit there and they'd have their, their drink. And as an adult, I was like, this is so exciting. I finally get to have wine with you guys. This is like the best. And I thought, oh, I finally did it, right? I'm an adult. And then somebody shared with me that what they don't finish in their glass, they pour back in the wine bottle.
Oh.
Oh,
right.
God.
And so I didn't have any more wine with them after.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, yeah.
I want to try this. So I'm going to do this real quick.
Which are you gonna
so that
try?
I can crunch.
Yeah, it's
Your-
not
your
as good as
conch.
mine, but yeah,
Yours is.
mine's. But it was my mother's recipe actually. Artichoke and green chili dip.
When I finished off today,
Yeah, at home. Yeah.
It's good though.
But it's. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not.
It's Deerberg's.
It's, yeah,
Be good.
yeah. It's not. It's not mine.
Okay.
Much better mine.
Do you know where we want to go from here?
I want to talk about the changes that have been out there for women, like what it was like, kind of get into that kind of conversation. We were talking a little bit about it earlier today.
Great.
Okay, let's roll in. Okay, well, we're back, and
Second bottle opened.
second bottle opened. Mom and Megan have not fled yet, so that's good. So I think it's
Well,
just-
the door's locked, so.
the door is locked, and I have the keys.
got it barred in front of us. Too.
We can't leave yet. We have things to talk about. So one of the things that I wanted to get some perspective on, I am fully aware of what it's like to be a nearly 50-year-old woman. I know my experience. I know, what it was like to be 20. I know what it's like to be 50. But I'm curious. I want to ask my mom. I want to ask Megan. What have you seen change for women moms since you were 20, 30, 40? And then Megan, similarly, I mean, you're living in a whole nother time for what women can do and be, and I'd like to hear some of like your perceptions, your experiences, and then what are our hopes as we all get older
For the next generation.
And behind us as women, and Emily, of course, always chime in. This is not an exclusionary conversation in any way. So, Mom.
Well, I think for me, the fact that my mother worked and she was in a corporation, I heard a lot. And at 20, high school 20, women didn't have a lot of a voice. She was one of the first 5 women that was on the executive payroll of a Brown Shoe Company. When she retired, they hired a man for double what she made.
Wow.
And they begged her to come back. And she wouldn't do it because they wouldn't pay her the same.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how
didn't know
much
about
that has
that.
changed.
Well, there's still struggles with that.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, the gap isn't maybe not as significant.
I think
hopefully,
women have
but-
gotten more of a voice, but we're not always allowed to say exactly what we want to say. We have to be careful how we approach it. Not just like men that come in and say whatever, although the men were treated not so nicely then either. But I was at 20, 21, a mother already and married and moving around the country because my husband was in the Air Force and he went to Vietnam. So it's just, it was different for me because I wasn't near my parents. The Air Force became my family. The people we were stationed with, the people that, we raised our kids together, everything. In fact, it's uncanny how we stayed attached to them. I had a phone call this past spring from 2 of my friends that we were stationed with in Myrtle Beach. They were having a reunion out in Tucson. They told me, you've got to come because I didn't go last time. And I'm divorced now from her dad. And it turned out that it was a lot of fun. We picked up where we had left off. Just the experiences. So I think as far as Megan's concerned, there's a whole world out there for women. And with the Me Too movement and stuff like that, I think it's going to go a lot further. We got bogged down with being, in the kitchen, pregnant in the kitchen. That her father told me one time when I turned 40 that I got a mouth.
When you turned 40?
When I had turned 40.
Or was it he finally... Oh, never mind. I was going to say, he finally got the wax out of his ears. You could hear it.
No, when I turned 40, I quit
Well,
taking
kept-
it,
quit
and
holding
I
back.
started
Yeah.
And I
saying, hey,
think-
this is me.
I think
This
a
is
lot
what
of
I'm
women
about.
do that. At 40, we kind of,
Start voicing.
sort
who
of
we-
like,
yeah.
hey, this isn't... We feel like really more comfortable in our skin and say, this isn't right. This doesn't work for me. Stop. Things
But
of
what
that
I want to
nature.
say in his defense is that he never, ever stopped taking care of his family. He always made sure his family was taken care of.
Yeah.
We were married almost 28 years when we divorced. But
Yeah.
we're both okay with each other.
Yeah, that's good.
We
Yeah.
can be in the same room without killing each other. Just give us some wine.
Yeah.
Well, Dad drinks red, Mom drinks Poufoussé, so it's all fine.
There you
I know how to do it now. I can keep everybody good and liquored up. But my other question, I guess, Mom, is when you were raising kids in the 70s, early 70s, there was the feminism movement going on. Were you aware of it? Were you just so focused on the kids? I mean, what sort of impact do you think it had on you? The burning the bras and the anti-war and and the
Well,
free love kind of thing. I mean, I'm just curious.
Well, I wasn't ready to find the nude beach, that's for sure. But no, I was busy raising 4 children.
Yeah.
and we moved around. So, and he wasn't always there when we moved.
Right.
So I had to get the family here, there, whatever. And my focus was my family. And I could teach. That was my personal. I taught dance wherever we were stationed.
Yeah.
So that was my personal, hey, this is what you do. But the rest of the time was my family.
Well, I could. Oh, I'm sorry, Emily. I do know, as growing up as your child, when my mom did not have the dance studio to go to as her outlet, it was not very fun at home. She was a little agitated. So we were always very happy when we moved to a new location when Mom found her studio, because that became
Her sanctuary, right? Yeah.
It was my
Release.
relief. You don't, it's like somebody that's an artist that goes to their art studio, or somebody that plays the piano for hours. It's a time that you don't think about what's going on in your life. So it's your refuge. And it was mine.
Yeah.
And first place I haven't taught is Florida.
I'm curious if, you mentioned that your husband wasn't always there. I'm sure a part of his job,
Yeah.
what he did. So I wonder if, because you had these prolonged periods where you weren't together, if that made it, when he was home, rather than voicing your opinion in earlier stages of your marriage, you were like, well, he's home. We got to take advantage of the situation. Everybody's got to be happy. And, if that
Well,
then...
yes, Michelle spoke up one time. She says, Daddy's coming home. I said, does that mean we have to eat around the kitchen table again? I said, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I guess it was just we were living the life of luxury when Dad wasn't around with Mom. Yeah. No, but then
No,
Dad,
I didn't let you get away with
No,
stuff.
you didn't. You didn't. But Dad would always make us different breakfasts than Mom did. So, but we're not. This is not a podcast about
No,
my
but I,
parents. But I think Emily's question is valid. When somebody's gone, I mean, even like Meg's dad, he's gone all. Now, I'm not married to him, obviously, but when he's around, it's like, oh, he's here, so let's just enjoy.
Let's be peaceful.
Let's enjoy the time while he's here.
Yeah, which might explain too then why, like, later on in life, and when your children were older, it was like, darn it, I'm going to speak my mind now. We don't.
well, I didn't make that decision. I think it just happened.
Yeah, evolved.
It did, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't consciously make that decision. But
Yeah.
Interesting.
Megan, you've always been a quiet child. You've never really had much to say about anything. So I want to ask you.
I'm just an active listener.
I'm very good at it.
Yes. What is it you'd like to ask me?
I would like to ask you, with what you've experienced. I guess you grew up with a child of divorced parents, a pretty independent mom. I know this for, I can speak from experience on that one. And, so you could see, I guess, struggles, and I don't want to lead you down to the answer that I want you to say in any way, but what has it been like for you as a early 20s female, making your way, seeing the changes in our society, and what would you like our society to look like for people?
Okay. Well, everybody's lived experience is different, right? And I think that, yes, there are a lot of things, a lot of, privileges in my life that I never really understood when I was younger, that they weren't always that way. It's sort of weird and a little disassociating to hear just 2 generations prior, someone in my family being like one of the first women in a corporation. Whereas, I don't know if it's just that we're sort of socialized to think that it's always been that way without really realizing where the work was done prior to get us there. But, I think in some ways I've had it easier than a lot of my predecessors. But in other ways, I have had, unique challenges that have not been something experienced by my family before. For example, I live as a queer woman. So that is in and of itself its own sort of everyday thing to navigate. And, we sort of like, the work is not done. So what? We have gay marriage. Like, there's a ton of other things going on. I mean, in 2017, I had some slurs thrown at me on the street.
Really?
Uh-huh. Even in as liberal oasis as Portland is, you still get people who, drop the F-bomb at you and you're just kissing your girlfriend. Like,
Oh my gosh.
so, there's that experience is its own, like, tough spot. And, learning about history that wasn't taught for me, especially gay history, and having to find that myself and search that out, and just learning how to be a more more intersectional in my feminism, right? I mean, you talk about bra burning and the beginning of the feminist movement, but now, I mean, in light of Me Too, in light of, various differences in the wage gap, I mean, we sort of talk about one, but it is different for women of different colors. And it's, that's sort of my everyday, like, alignment, I suppose, is to, try to be as educated as I can and recognize that, like, my position as a woman, as a queer woman, as a white woman, is many different, intersections, and you sort of have to recognize that, like, life doesn't happen in a vacuum. And so if we're going to keep moving forward, right, like we want to do for women, for all women,
Right.
we have to recognize that, like, not everybody has the same place. Not everybody has the same
Starting point.
either. And so that's just something that I think about every day, and I try to, share that with others so that they can be.
It's a great perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you think that our society what could we do to improve the way that we educate young people about the fact that many of us identify sexuality in a different way? You mentioned having a difficult time learning about the history of, queer people, gay people.
Right.
Do you have thoughts on what could be done to improve what that might look like for the next generation?
Well, I'll answer that question because I'm not uncomfortable with it. But there are folks who would definitely be uncomfortable answering that.
As a queer person, they'd be uncomfortable
Just
answering that?
the concept of, like, well, how do we fix it? From your position of marginality, tell us how to fix it.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not uncomfortable with that because I think that it's important. And I think the answer is people got to stop being afraid of everybody. There has to be this sort of humanization of others who are different from you, truthfully, because that's how you keep folks divided, is if you're like, well, if you don't know a gay person, there are air quotes there, folks. If you don't know a gay person, then, like, it's easier for you to, like, stay disconnected from what would be considered rights that should be held by them, right? So there's got to be, like, it's important to recognize differences, but you just don't be afraid of them. And I think...
And don't judge.
Well, yeah, but also it's a lot of what I think this sort of, like, hateful, like, distancing and discriminating against comes from just fear. Is just fear of the unknown, of something that you don't understand. And truthfully, you don't have to understand it to respect it. And I think that that's, like, sort of the biggest take home, is that, like, we just need to, teach our kids and teach your friends in ways that are constructive and compassionate, and they don't have to be aggressive. That, like, just because you don't understand this person doesn't mean that you don't respect them and that they don't deserve to have rights, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to ask a question because I'm curious. The term queer, that is one that I feel like has come more into mainstream culture in the last several years. For me, like, we've heard about homosexuality, gay, and me, when I was much younger as a kid growing up, the term queer was thrown out as a negative slang.
definitely.
But now I'm hearing it in a much more positive light. It seems to me like it's got almost not a new meaning, but maybe there's something different
There's
behind
not
that
as
word
much hatred attached to the word.
Yeah, there's something. It's become a part of how some gay people identify themselves. You
Definitely.
said I live my life as a queer person.
Right.
So, in your perspective, like how has that word shifted, and is there a difference between being queer and being gay?
I mean, when we get into identities, it's sort of like what fits best for that person. And I think that, historically, queer is definitely thrown around as like a slur. And that's based on the user at that point in time, right? And I know that definitely within the LGBTQ community, a lot of folks feel more comfortable with that label because it's not necessarily tying you down to one thing. I mean,
Sure.
the definition of
fluid.
queer itself means to be not the norm,
Okay.
and that's, again,
Sure.
air quotes. I don't have a dictionary in front of me. But I sort of move through different labels. Sometimes it's easier to just say a queer woman because that doesn't necessarily mean anything. But I'm a lesbian. I refer to myself as a gay, like just jokingly
Yeah.
within my own community. But I think that it is definitely sort of a reclaimed word, and working towards reclaiming that word when historically it hasn't always been.
Well, when it joined the LGBT,
Right.
when it became the last letter in that, right? That's
Yeah.
That's when people started to embrace that word in a new way, maybe.
I don't know because I don't have that perspective.
I think maybe, but when I was growing up, Q also meant questioning, just sort of this-
Sure.
Because
That's
again,
true.
I feel like
But it could, queer questioning, all sorts of different labels. I mean, there are many labels, and for some folks, none of those fit.
Right.
So
Well, when I was dancing, and I started when I was 3, queer was the word for dancers.
Really?
Yes, that were gay. They were queer. That was the word. And I never liked it
Ah.
because they were my friends.
Right.
did they by having them being called that, did you have, when you said just now, you said, but they were my friends. I didn't like that word because they were my friends. Did you feel somewhere in a societal pull that because they were called queer, you couldn't be their friend?
I think so because, my parents didn't understand them. I'm dancing with them,
Yeah.
getting to know them as a person and what their person is.
Yeah.
And I couldn't see why people didn't like them.
Right.
So they liked the guy. I mean, I remember being at the dance platform and one of the guys coming up and saying, I'm having this trouble. I thought, guys, they didn't even have trouble, in their romantic lives. And I thought, oh my gosh. But they were my friends.
Right.
And I didn't like when people called them queer, and I would let them know it. I said,
Yeah.
you don't know them, you don't label them. They're people. They're people.
Right. So it sounds like you had a voice all your life, that your voice was there. Maybe when, not necessarily standing up for yourself until you were 40-ish, but definitely standing up for those that you care about and loved,
Yeah.
your whole life. And Megan, not to flip us up all over the place, but we are drinking this really great wine, so my brain goes a bunch of places. And you're coughing right now, so of course I'm going to put all the focus and effort on you right now. When you say identify as a queer woman, and do you feel that is that subset or that segment of the of female society, I don't know what the word is, like that's your circle, and that's going to be your focus, and that the rest of the women out there who are not identify as queer female don't really matter as much to you because.
Are you asking me if I'm a lesbian exclusionist?
Well, I guess if that's the right terminology for it.
I mean, there was, in the radical feminism movement years ago, you did have your lesbian separatists.
I remember watching that on the
Yeah.
movie, and I was wondering about that.
No.
Okay.
I mean, I
Do you feel cut off from the rest of the straight women?
Well, I think that I have a couple thoughts. I think that in some ways, yes. In terms of just really, we're going to broad speak heteronormative culture in general. There's a lot of things that like don't happen in my everyday life that like sometimes when I hear about them, I'm like, whew, that is not a problem I have to deal with.
Like what?
I don't know. Just like
Like a man slapping you on your ass.
Yeah,
at work?
I mean, those aren't things that I deal with, or even just like some of the like, dating drama. Like I have not had to deal with that as an adult woman, right? Like trying to navigate being a single adult, a straight woman. That's not something I've ever had to do.
So did you ever date boys, or you just always
I
knew?
did when I was younger,
Okay.
but I mean, it took me until my freshman year of college down in Mississippi, and I was like,
Yeah.
I was like, a joke. I was like, no. I came home and I was like, I'm gay, like just all the way. But so in some ways, yes, but that's just because I get nervous. Like I don't have that experience, and so in some ways I can't relate. And I imagine that it's often reciprocated in that way, right? For women who are just don't have those queer experiences. There's a barrier to relation. But that's just in my head, right? That's not like anything that anybody projects on me. But I did want to go back to this sort of like your question about, defining myself as a queer woman and as I live a queer life. If you just take a step back think about what queer means in general, like to queer as a verb, my life is not anything that is like a normal traditional sort of like graduate high school, go to college for 4 years, being in a serious relationship, getting married. Like I have not done that in any particular order, right? My bachelor's degree has taken me almost 6 years. I have,
That you paid for on your own.
well, yes, but right, like I just sort of have lived a different kind of life. So in that way, it's also a queer life. It's a little different than the
so it's
standard.
on lots of several layers there. Are a lot of your friends that you grew up with, have they gone on that traditional path that you were referring to?
Yeah, and sometimes it's tough to not compare myself to them. A lot of folks who are my age are already graduated. Like my partner has been out of school for a couple of years, and I get a little like, oh, I'm not there yet, and I feel, sort of behind, and that's like not true, but that's definitely an insecurity that I have around a lot of folks that I went to middle school and high school with. I mean, I see people all the time entering PhD programs and sort of doing this because that's what they love, and I don't wish them any harm, but for my own self, it's like, yeah, like, you guys have taken this path and you're being wildly successful. And so, whenever you are different in any sort of realm of life, sometimes comparing yourself to those who are maybe just chugging along that straight line can be a difficult comparison to like stop yourself from doing.
Yeah, you can do that
If I can
regardless.
insert something, you are going to come out with such a much better vision for anybody you see as a client or anything like that because of what you've gone through. And these are your choices.
Yeah.
And so don't ever belittle yourself because you're doing your choices. And you're paying for it yourself. I am so proud of you.
Thank you.
And I know this because as a dance teacher, did not realize I was being trained to be the teacher that I was.
When you were dancing?
When I was dancing.
Okay.
But because of my experiences, and I didn't go on with it professionally, I could counsel my students that were good
Right.
what to expect if that's what they wanted. And I think from what you've been doing in your life, you're going to be able to do the same thing and you'll get a lot of satisfaction from it.
Thank you.
Love you.
I love you too.
This is why we do the podcast, Emily. This is so why we do the podcast all the time.
This is my granddaughter that when we were going to, we were taking our first train trip.
To Springfield.
What was she, 4, 5?
No, she would have been
3,
6 because
6.
Jacob was 2.
So we were taking.
Well,
and of course
let me give a little backstory. I had had this idea that I was going to take my 2 children by myself on the train to Springfield. And my wise mother said, Michelle, are you sure you want to go on this trip by yourself with your 6-year-old and your 2-year-old? Yeah, Mom, I can handle it. Are you sure, Michelle? 'Cause I'm available.
Mother's advice.
Mom, why don't you come with me?
Yeah.
Best decision I made. I don't know how I would have
train
done
trip turned into a part of a bus trip.
I do
Oh,
remember that.
And so we're
my.
sitting there, and Jacob's in the back seat and behind me with his mother, Michelle, and I had Megan. She was next to the window, and Megan is not a talker. Anyway, she was just sitting in the seat next to me and just yakking away. I didn't nod and listen to her, and finally she looked up to me and she said, "Grandma." I said, "What, Megan?" She said, "Am I talking too much?" And I said, "Well, maybe a little." So it goes way back with her.
So I don't have. I'm sitting on the outside. You guys were all there on this story, and there's been a couple of times that the comments come up that Megan is not a talker, and there's these air quotes, and so I do not know. Is this sarcastic?
Yes.
Okay.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. When she calls and we talk on the phone, my husband Gary says, "Okay, I'll see you in an hour and a half."
Oh,
When Megan was a baby, she started chattering when she was about 3 or 4 months old, and even we would stick the binky in her mouth, and she still would talk with.
She takes after her mother.
Oh, I'm not a talker at all. I know it's just terrible. I'm doing this podcast.
it's amazing how you turn it on when we're here.
Just when we're here, I don't speak at all. Otherwise,
She bossed her brother and 2 male cousins around when she was 2.
Yes.
You're not helping me get any dates out there, Mom. They're gonna say she's
But
been
you were 2.
bossing men around since I was 2. And my daughter just gave me the big old eye roll on that one. This is wonderful. I really totally appreciate each of you and Emily as well. But I really thank you, Megan, for listening to me talk about my podcast. Have you heard about it? Have you told your friends?
Yeah, I'm curious. Have either of you listened to the podcast?
I have, yes.
Oh, okay.
No, I have not.
Okay.
I'm not sure how to get there yet.
Okay. So it's a technology holdup for you.
And I've been moving.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a good reason. Megan, have you listened to
Yeah,
a couple?
I've listened
how
to a
many?
few.
A few.
Yeah, I love podcasts in general, so I sort of like cycle through. And you guys are definitely like a longer episode one, you know?
Right.
Like
They've gotten longer and longer. Yeah.
you guys are good for bike rides for sure.
Oh,
I'll-
good.
yeah.
Okay. We'll have to use that as a testimonial. Going for a bike ride? So what episode that you've listened to was your favorite?
You know, I did like, I can't remember if it was the second or the third one, whichever one I think, Mom, that you recommended for me after I listened to the pilot, of course. I
In the know?
think so, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that was episode 8 then.
8, okay,
Yeah.
so I don't keep track of the
Yeah,
numbers.
we
but
know. We all know. We know the numbers.
yeah, you guys know
Yeah.
the numbers.
That's what we have
But
to
yeah,
do. Yeah.
I really enjoyed the content and just, you know, appreciate that folks were having that kind of conversation.
Oh, absolutely. It's one that we want to continue to have too.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate everything about you. Thank you for coming on,
Well, thank you for having me.
sharing your perspective, and hopefully every time you come into St. Louis, I'll get you on the show as a repeat guest. And then, Mom, I love you so much, and it's really been a dream of mine to have a conversation like this. I adore the podcast people, StoryCorps, and the intergenerational conversations that they have on their podcast. And I've always wanted to have something like that, and so I so appreciate you helping make this a reality for me today. We could, and we will talk, I know, lots more, but it's nice to memorialize it for me.
And thank you for letting me be a part of the conversation.
I wouldn't have had it any other way, Emily, at all. And Sam, you've been so quiet over there. Thanks for
Yes.
being a fantastic audio engineer for us and a support for Clearly Speaking, the podcast. But we have about a sip left on our bottle, our very, very good bottle of Profusé. And I want to say here's to the women in this room,
Yeah.
and the women and our men who are listening.
We appreciate you.
We appreciate you.
Yes. And we always want to hear your stories too. If you have anything to share with regards to any of the conversation that we've had today, please feel free to reach out to us, give us a call, send us a message on one of our social media platforms.
Like us, subscribe to us, write a review, all of those things that we say all the time. And, we really appreciate it. So,
Absolutely.
take care. Until next time.
Bye.